Evening, everyone. This is Phil Dixon. I go by Phil S. Dixon, and I'm here with a new version of This Day in Black Baseball History. This is going to be October the 8th version, and of course, today is October the 8th, 2025. So, this is going to be a remembrance of this day with great feats in African American baseball history. Also, I'm going to introduce a new segment and to tonight's broadcast, and it's going to be called Comings and Goings. And these are people who were born and people who were deceased on this date. So we'll do that at the end of the broadcast. I have lots of stuff to get going with tonight, so I'm not going to waste any time. I'll give like 1 minute, and I'm sure some other people will be joining in. So we're just going to dance through this. So many things happen on October the 8th, and I'm just loaded with facts. I will tell you this. I've been noticing now, the more I do this, that imitators are popping up trying to give their own this day events that happen on this day in Black baseball history. Let me tell you something. It's going to be tough to compete with this broadcast. You can go ahead and try if you want to. But over the past 45 years, whenever I saw something interesting, I would take and put in a spreadsheet. So I look for multiple home run games. I look for no-hitters. I look for, just fantastic feats. A guy pitching both ends of a doubleheader. Anybody with double-digit strikeouts. Games against major league teams where African-American teams walked away with the victory. I look for games not only in New York, Chicago, some of the big teams that you might know from the league and pre-league. But I also try to go into regional areas. And so you will hear things, from Los Angeles and Utah and Colorado and Texas and Kansas, Missouri, Montana, New York State, New Jersey. You'll hear lots of things, Massachusetts, and you'll get a lot of information on stars that you should have known about, but you don't get a chance to know that much about them because not enough has been written on them. So, and then of course the thing that really separates the men from the boys is for me to give commentary. So I've got 45 years of commentary that's just stacked up, memories of people I met, places I've been, and I've literally done thousands of presentations over the last 45 years. So you can imagine the people I've met, and people would just come up to me and start talking. But whenever I was in a town, I would go out and do history and talk to anyone I could. And of course, even in my Kansas City community where I started, I played baseball here in the community as a kid, and people knew me as that little kid who knew a lot about baseball. And they used to talk to me all the time as a little kid, and I retain a lot of those memories too. So come on, guys, bring on your best copycat, but it's going to be hard to copy this one. But hey, I don't blame you. If you see something good out there, you might try to duplicate it. All right. So let's get right into it. Okay. Let's start. Okay. Tonight we've got things going from 1909 to 1978. So we're going to cover a lot of territory tonight. So let's go with the first one. And I've been talking about him a lot lately, but he just keeps popping up because he was all over the place. He was just a great player. So here we go. Harry Buckner tossed 7 innings and allowed 4 runs while getting the win as the Brooklyn Royal Giants defeated the New York Yankees of the American League by a 9-6 score in Norwalk, Connecticut. Buckner also hit a home run. Hal Chase, Charlie Hempfield, Kid Eberfield, Ray, Dimmitt, Walter Blair, Rube Manning, and Slow Jim Doyle all participated in the loss. Now, what we're finding here now, because it's 1909, they could have been called the New York Highlanders, but they're the precursor to the New York Yankees, regardless of how you look at it. And so here you go. You got the Brooklyn Royal Giants defeating them. Now, it sounds kind of unheard of. Just imagine you've got the Yankees now, and you can bring a team that nobody knows about for the most part. They just say they're pretty good, and they come out and defeat them. Man, that's quite an accomplishment. And the interesting thing about the Brooklyn Royal Giants, I know that in 1905, the Cuban ex-Giants defeated the the Brooklyn team. So this happened all the time, and you see all of these guys, and you can go look them up. They were true American leaguers. This wasn't just some little patched up team they put together. They were trying to compete, and you got Harry Buckner, and I tell you, Harry Buckner was one of the first pitcher home run threats. Okay, and we talk about Lillard. Man, the first one was Harry Buckner. Harry Buckner, and he does not get credit for how good he was. Harry Buckner, and he played a long time, pitched a lot of games, he had a lot of home runs. And so I hope to do something a little more specific on Harry Buckner and start counting some of these great achievements that he had. So anyway, that's Harry Buckner, all right? So that was October 8th, 1909. Let's go to October 8th, 1911. In a game played at Kansas City's Association Park, Hurley McNair of the Kansas City, Kansas Giants bested Harry Siebert of the American Association Kansas City Blues in a 0-0 7-inning tie. The eighth inning, in the eighth inning, the game was called because of darkness. McNair having pitched a splendid one-hitter. Now, okay, so this is the Kansas City Blues. The Kansas City Blues are one step under what we would call the American National League. They were a AAA team. And okay, so what happens? You got Hurley McNair, who was not known for his pitching later on. He's actually one of the great, we called him the great sun fielders in the Kansas City Monarchs history. That's the guy who would play say in the field that you're going to get the most sun, right? And so, these guys, they didn't have, sunglasses or anything like that. And so Hurley McNair specializes one of the game's best sun fielders. Also, George Giles told me that Hurley McNair was so great that he could take 2 strikes on Jesus Christ and base hit the third one. George Giles thought a lot of Hurley McNair. His name, he was a short guy, so they called him Booger, because he was so little. But this guy was a tremendous home run hitter out of Marshall, Texas. And but he came to Kansas City, Kansas Giants is a pitcher. And that's where he made his first mark. So there he is, 1911. And these are exhibition games I'm looking at right now. And he pitches a one-hitter, tie game. Interesting that Hurley McNair later on becomes an umpire in the Negro National League. And I could tell you some interesting stories about him umpiring and how he got in some, actually how he lost the job. That's for another day. But I will tell you this. Hurley McNair didn't have any children. He was married for a long time, no children. And but he had a nephew that he raised. And his nephew was the one who I met, who lived in Ohio somewhere. And he was in town, and somebody said, hey, Hurley McNair's relative is in town. I've been telling you about him. I can't remember who it was. So anyway, I was able to go over and meet him. He was traveling around, and he came to town in Winnebago. And so I went over and interviewed him, and he liked what I was doing with the history. This probably was about 1981, 82, somewhere in there. And so he said, hey, when I get back to Ohio, he said, I'm going to send you some pictures that you can use for your publication. And that's how I got pictures of Hurley McNair. Have you ever seen the picture that appears in my photographic history of Hurley McNair batting? That's one of them. There's another one where Hurley McNair is in a room with a bunch of different people. I think 1 or 2 ball players, and maybe Ruth Curry appears in that one. That came from him. And hey, how about this? I've got pictures I've never produced. So people have not seen some of the other pictures that I have of Hurley McNair. What I will tell you is the pictures that I did release of Hurley McNair have been copied. And of course, people copied them out of my book, and then they forgot about Phil Dixon, and they say, hey, I own these pictures. And then they started selling them, putting their name and their company on them, but they actually copied them out of my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History. So those are photographs. I can tell you where they really came from and how they were acquired, and only I can do that. Most other people can't tell you that, because the way they acquired them, it was basically, what we want to say, they stole them and lifted them from my book. So that's not much of a story to tell, but yeah, I can tell, actually knew Hurley McNair's relative, and I have letters in my collection to verify all of this. So anyway, Hurley McNair, he's buried in Highland Park Cemetery, the same cemetery where Charlie Bird Parker is buried. Quincy Gilmore, Monarch's traveling secretary, is buried there, and I've been there before as well. So, and seeing right where McNair is buried. So he does have a marker. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. Let's go to October 8th, 1911. Okay, we're still in 1911. However, we're going to go across to New York on Olympic Field. So Dick Redding tossed both ends of a doubleheader to defeat Jersey City of the Eastern League at Olympic Field. He won the first game by a 6-3 score, and the second a 7-inning affair by the 5-0 score, and struck out 11. So, hey, he got stronger as the day went on, pitched a shutout in the second time. Now, once again, the Eastern League is considered a Triple-A league, one step under the Major League. Now, remember the Major Leagues, you know, what they have, 8 teams in the National and 8 teams in the American. So there are lots of good players. I mean, you think about how many teams we have now and how many people are playing at the American National League level. Back then, it was tough to get in there. So these teams in the AAA and the AA, they would be very strong. And because some of these guys would be regulars on this team until their contract was sold to a major league team, or I'm saying to an American and National League team, they were stuck there in that minor league team. Lefty Groves was one of those guys, played for Baltimore in the International League. There's many stories like that of guys, and of course, there were guys who would go to the Pacific Coast League and they would just stay there forever and be Pacific Coast League stars. But anyway, so he's not pitching against a bunch of scrubs. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. These guys were for real. That's why I'm so proud to talk about these men in their baseball history. This is not the history that I was being told when I was coming along reading books, digesting everything, reading and digesting everything I could about baseball history. But I was not getting a true reflection of what really happened in America. And it was when I decided that this will never work. And I began as basically 21 years old to rewrite the history. And I wanted to write it in a different way than Bob Peterson was doing. You know, you would never see me write something, say somebody was the Black Babe Ruth or something like that. I didn't write that mess, man. You know what? I wanted to tell you what made a player great. And I wanted to show you what he achieved in his playing days, right? On a day-to-day basis. I'm still trying to do that. So there was a lot of things I didn't focus a whole lot on, you know, things like actually, if you look at my photographic history, you don't see any pictures of many ball players clowning around. You don't see, I didn't put a whole lot of pictures of Indianapolis Clowns. I was real serious about what I was doing because I knew what I was trying to achieve, and I knew the obstacles that I would have to overcome to make these men legitimate in the whole baseball universe. And so that's what I've been trying to do, and that's what I'm doing tonight. So, all right, so both ends of a doubleheader. That's pretty good, all right? Okay, so how about this one? October 8, 1930, Ted Trent no-hit Max Curry's Big League All-Stars at Stars Park, winning 2-0. How about that? Big League Stars? Who you think that was? You think that was a bunch of scrubs? No. He no-hit them. Now, I'm going to tell you something else. Stars Park was extremely tough to pitch in because it was tiny. It was tiny. That's why you have Willie Wells hitting so many home runs, Mule Suttles hitting so many home runs. I've seen times when the Monarchs would play all season in Association Park in Kansas City. They hit 5 home runs. They go to St. Louis for a 4-game series, and they hit 8 home runs. Crazy stuff like that. In the other park, they play 40, 50 games and hit 5 home runs, and then they go there and play a 4-game series, hit 8. That ought to tell you something. And boy, just imagine, so you had to put a Heavy Johnson and Bullet Rogan and boy, Adobe Moore, who else? George Carr. You had to put them in Stars Park. Man, they would have ate that place alive, just like Willie Wells and Mule Suttles did, right? So Yeah, this is history. So for him to pitch a no-hitter in Stars Park, that's big. That's big. But but if you don't know the size of these parks, it doesn't make a bit of difference. You just say, oh, the guy pitched a no-hitter. No, he pitched a no-hitter for real. And Ted Trent was a wonderful player. He was known for his curveball, and many times the Kansas City Monarchs picked him up. Actually, they picked him up in 1934 when they played the Dizzy Dean All-Stars. He was with them for several games. Ted Trent, well, famous American Giants pitcher out of Florida. And Ted Trent, I talked to guys. The big knock on Ted Trent is, unfortunately, he drank too much, and he pretty much drank himself out of baseball. But he put up some pretty good numbers while he was there, and was one of the premier curveball artists in the Negro League. So you knew he was going to throw a curveball. You wasn't going to hit it. So he had that kind of curveball like Hilton Smith. You just couldn't hit it. So that's Ted Trent. And I've been to where he's buried in Chicago. He's buried in Burr Oak Cemetery. And if I'm correct, I think he died from tuberculosis. I have to double check on that one. But that was, yeah, I think it was tuberculosis. I featured Ted Trent in my 1986 baseball card set, Dixon's Negro League Greats. Actually, Hurley McNair was also featured in that set as well. So there's images of them. So, okay, let's keep it going. How about this one? October 8, 1932, the Kansas City Monarchs defeated the All-Stars 17-7 at Joplin, Missouri's Childress Field. John Gutteridge, who would become an infielder for the St. Louis Cardinals, was the all-star pitcher. And I talked about Don Gutteridge maybe last night or the night before. And of course, I interviewed Don Gutteridge. He was from Pittsburgh, Kansas. And I'm trying to think, the guy's first name, Mueller was his last name. And he was from Pittsburgh also. And that was Don Gutteridge's cousin. He played in the National League as well. So, yeah, Don Gutteridge, I had a chance to interview him. And of course, when I first started following baseball, I think I was just, I was probably following baseball 3 or 4 years, but Don Gutteridge was the manager of the White Sox. And he actually managed at Colorado Springs too. And he used to always tell me how great a player Jim Landis was. And of course, he had Sam Hairston there. He really liked Sam Hairston. He had him at Colorado Springs. He had Connie Johnson at Colorado Springs. And a guy named Dave Polk was there. Dave Pope was there. And Bill Panono, let me correct myself. Bill Pope was there. Dave was over in Cleveland. So they were brothers. So Bill Pope was there. He was a pitcher. Dave was an outfielder. Okay? So just want to make sure I clarify that. Well, I know you guys are spot checking me all along the way, right? So, but I'm doing this by memory. A lot of things I'm just saying that I'm just pouring it out. Things that I know that I've experienced, okay? So we're gonna go from there. All right, so we're up to 1932, talked about Don Gutteridge, Joplin, Missouri. All right, so let's go to this one. How about, let's throw this one in here. How about throwing in a baseball player who was a football player? We're in that season now, so you're gonna hear a few more things like this coming through my This Day in African American baseball history. So October 8th, 1933, Joe Lillard, the baseball-playing football athlete who is a Chicago Cardinals halfback, and that's the NFL, Chicago Cardinals, place-kicked a 15-yard field goal to give the Cardinals a 3-0 win over the Cincinnati Reds in National Football League action. Lillard was later ejected from the game for fighting. And back in those days, guys, these players didn't want you on the field. So you might have to fight your way through. But who was Joe Lillard? Well, let me tell you, Joe Lillard, he's from, okay, boy, I'm trying to think of the name of the city from in Iowa. And yeah, actually, one of his pictures is in the school annual. So he came from Iowa. I'm going to name the town in a moment. But I think it was Mason City. Iowa. So Joe Lillard, but he also played baseball. So he played with the Gilkerson Union Giants. Later on, went out and played football for Oregon. And Oregon ended up kicking him off the team. Just imagine this. He was tearing the league up, that whole Pacific area there. And, you know, they had teams like UCLA and Oregon, Utah, that kind of thing. So he's tearing them to pieces. So they said, we got to get rid of this guy. And so somebody went and they did some investigation. And they said, he played baseball with the Gilchrist Union Giants. So he's a professional baseball player. Now, what's interesting is this. When did they ever classify the Gilchrist Union Giants as a professional baseball team at that time? Believe me, they didn't look at any of these African-American teams as professional. They were calling them amateur. They were calling, I mean, can you imagine this? The 1910 Chicago Leland Giants, amateurs. 1905 Philadelphia Giants, amateurs. I mean, going to Lincoln Giants, amateur. And they're listed on the amateur sports over and over and over again. But when they decide they want to get a black guy out of their football league, they say, hey, these leagues are professional. Well, it turns out they were right. And history has been wrong all the time. They really were professional. They were professional, no doubt about it. But that's not history, how history wanted to remember them, unless they had a purpose. And their purpose was to get Joe Lillard out of Pacific, I forget, the Pac-10, I think he was in. So anyway, but he didn't go away. And he ended up being recruited again and ended up in the NFL. And you think about it, boy, you think about these teams, just imagine the Chicago Cardinals. And somebody can probably tell me the evolution of what those Cardinals became and who they are today. And how about the Cincinnati Reds? There was a Cincinnati Reds in the National Football League. And Joe Lillard went out of the game fighting, but before he did, he kicked that field goal. And the thing is, back then, you could punt a ball, and if it went through the uprights, that counted as 3 points. So he was kicking and running, and he literally kicked their butts. That was Joe Lillard. We need to talk about him more. Interesting about Joe, not only could he play baseball, but he played basketball, professional basketball, and professional football. Why are we talking about this guy? Somebody tell me. Why aren't we talking about Joe Lillard a lot? But we're going to talk about him on these broadcasts, okay? Let's keep it going, all right? I have too much stuff in here. I just got to close it out. So let's go October the 8th, 1933, man. We're really in the 30s here. So that Joe Lillard was October the 8th, 1933. And this is another October the 8th, 1933. How about Webster McDonald? Won both ends of a doubleheader versus the Major League All-Stars, pitching in relief in Game 1 and starting Game 2. McDonald and the Baltimore Black Sox defeated the All-Stars 10-7 in the first game and 6-4 at Baltimore's Bugle Field. And Harry Williams with 5 hits and Judd Wilson added a home run in the victories, we'll put it that way. Now, Judd Wilson, one of my favorite players, man, you know, when I was growing up and they talked about how good a hitter Ted Williams was, I don't know how much you know about Judd Wilson, but this guy could hit that ball. If Ted Williams was better than Judd Wilson, he had to be damn good. Because Judd Wilson was incredible. And he hated to lose. He hated to lose. And I could tell you some great things. I wrote a bio on him in my book, The 1931 Homestead Grays. And I've talked about him quite a bit over the years, Judd Wilson. And so anyway, just a tremendous player. Webster McDonald, he died right around, I think, maybe 1981, maybe, somewhere in there. And I just missed talking to him. I remember I had his number, and he passed away before I could actually interview him. He was living in Philadelphia. He too has a great baseball legacy. He pitched for a number of years out in Little Falls, Minnesota. And so I've talked to a lot of people there over the years, especially probably in the mid-90s. And I have his whole entire records from playing out there. And so anyway, Webster McDonald. So now you got 2 guys on this day pitching both ends of a doubleheader. Now, I don't know how many times that happened in the American National League, but it certainly happened in the Negro Leagues. And so one of these days, I'm going to find a guy who pitched 3 games in one day. Watch, I'll find it. Okay? All right, so let's go to, let's see, we're going to do two more. Okay, so I'll try to dance through these quickly. We're going to go to October 9th, 1949. And Fred Pallas, age 67, the man who discovered both Wilbur Bullet Rogan and Richard Dick Whitworth, was buried on this date in Kansas City, Kansas at West Lawn Cemetery. Interesting thing, Fred Pallas. Years ago, when Robert Peterson wrote Only the Ball Was White, he wrote in there that the Kansas City, that Wilbur Bullet Rogan began his baseball career playing for the Pullman Colts. Later on, I talked to a guy named Fred Langford, who was a teammate of his, and he said, no, it wasn't the Pullman Colt, it was the Pallas Colts, and that was Fred Pallas's team. Fred Pallas owned a fish market down on 5th Street in Kansas City, Kansas. That's my hometown, so when I call 5th Street, I know these streets intimately. And so anyway, that was Fred Pallas, and he's buried in West Lawn Cemetery. And West Lawn is the traditional African-American cemetery in Kansas City, Kansas. And in certain places, you have African-American cemeteries. If you go to Topeka, they have African-American cemetery where D. Williams is buried there. Topeka Jack Don Johnson is buried there. In Kansas City, they have several. They have Highland, and actually I mentioned Hurley McNair and Charlie Parker. They're buried in Highland. That was an all-black cemetery. And of course, in my town, it was West Lawn. And one of the reasons why they started the West Lawn Cemetery, there were other cemeteries in the community, but I remember there was one, it's on 8th Street, and we used to walk through that cemetery because it was by the baseball park where we played baseball. And so we would take the shortcut home, go through the cemetery, and we had, back in those days, we had our spikes tied, and they would be over our shoulder, and we used to have baseball bats, and we used to go through the cemetery and in the spring, and we'd be killing ringneck snakes, because we saw there was a lot of snakes in the cemetery. But in that particular cemetery, there was a hill and then there was a low part that kind of flooded. So they would always put black people in the most undesirable area. That's where you get buried, in that low part, that when it was a lot of rain, the water would just come down there. So a lot of people in my community got tired of that, and so they started their own cemetery, and that was West Lawn. So there's a number of outstanding people who are buried in West Lawn. I'm trying to think, probably I know Fred Langford is buried there. I'm trying to think who might be the most prominent baseball player. I have to think for a minute. But it is the traditional African-American cemetery, and so my grandmother, grandfather on my mother's side, my grandfather on my father's side, I have uncles. They're all buried in West Lawn Cemetery, so I go there quite often and decorate that though. All right, so that's Fred Pallas. He was 67. He passed away, and of course, if you've been listening to my broadcast, you know what I have lots to say about Bullet Rogan. I have lots to say about Richard Dick Whitworth, and I knew their family members very well, and so I talk about them all the time, and I've been able to elevate their history over the years, especially Dick Whitworth. And once again, the history I'm giving you is not something like his newspaper online. So, all right, so we got last one, October 8th, 1953. October 8th, former Kansas City Monarchs infielder Curtis Benjamin Roberts is purchased from the Denver Bears by the National League Pittsburgh Pirates. Roberts batted .991 with Denver in 1953 to set a Western League record of 468 assists for a second baseman. I knew Roberts very well. Actually, let me correct that. I know his history very well, but I interviewed his wife, and he married a young lady from Kansas City, Missouri. And when I was doing research, I talked to her, and this is back in the 80s. And then also her father was alive, so I was able to talk to him as well. And both of them had some great memories of Curt Roberts. Okay, so that takes care of that baseball history for tonight. So we want to do some comings and some goings. And this is probably one of the longest broadcasts I've done. It's probably going to go around into 35 minutes. So anyway, goings. How about October 8th, 19th? No. Let me go this. This is becomings. Okay, so comings, October 8th, 1913. And Ted Raspberry, who was later on the owner of the Kansas City Monarchs, is born. And on October 8, 1913, I knew Ted. Ted operated out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I knew Ted very well. Well, I could tell you a lot of stories about Ted. I'm going to do that at some point, but we won't do that tonight since the broadcast is running a little bit long. Just know Ted Raspberry was born on October the 8th, 1913. Okay, so that's comings and goings. How about Junior Gilliam? He passed away on October the 8th, 1978. And of course, he was a former Brooklyn Dodger, Los Angeles Dodger, ended up being coach. I never had a chance to interview him, and sadly, he passed away. But he was one of my favorite ball players that I always hoped to have met. And so by the time I got real serious with my history, he passed away in 1978. And probably last one, also we'll do another coming. It's going to be Enos Cabello. Enos Cabello was born on October the 8th. And if you ever follow my history and I talk about Chet Brewer and the guys he sent to the major leagues and who played on his famous high school team, and that was people like Doc Ellis and Bob Watson and Bobby Tolan, Reggie Smith. Well, he also had Enos Cabello on that team as well. So Enos Cabello is connected all in this history. So anyway, guys, that kind of wraps it up for me tonight. This has been a long broadcast, so if you get a chance to come in and maybe listen to a piece of it, go ahead. But now, if you like what I'm doing, some broadcasts are going to be shorter, but if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and hit that bell, which is subscribe. I'm going to try to get to 1,000 subscribers by December the 31st. So we're going to start getting real creative and how we're going to do that. But guys, I'm going to come on every night and give you a lot of what we could call, matter of fact, I'll just tell you this last story. Hank Bauer, a famous baseball player who played for the Yankees, played for the Kansas City Athletics. And Hank Bauer used to sit next to me at Royal Stadium. He was an advanced scout for the Yankees. And he used to come out and sit with me in the open air booth. Now, I didn't have a official like major league press pass, but I was writing for a newspaper. So, but I had a press pass where I could go out to the stadium every night and write. And so Hank would come by and sit next to me, and he would always say, "Hey, you still collecting that baseball dope?" And it was called baseball dope. He used to always call it baseball dope. So that was Hank Bauer, man, just a hell of a nice guy that had an opportunity to meet. And the fabulous thing for me, guys, is I've loved baseball all my life, and to meet so many people who are historic in the game and be able to tell you about all these memories I have about them, is a delight for me. So we're going to cut it off tonight, guys. This does it for me tonight, and I'll come back tomorrow. Hopefully I won't have as many. I don't think I have as many tomorrow, but this has been a long broadcast, even by my own my own standards. So I enjoy talking to you, and hopefully you're enjoying what we're doing here. And I want to say hello to everybody who's out here and who's listening to me tonight. And I appreciate you coming in. And one of these days, I'm going to start calling off everybody's name and giving you some kudos for joining me. So thanks a lot, guys. I'm out of here for tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow. Maybe I'll come in earlier. One of these days, I'm going to figure out how I can get on at the same time every day. So, all right. In the meanwhile, take it easy and keep enjoying these playoffs and all the rest of the stuff that's going on in baseball right now. This is Phil Dixon, author, historian, and I'm checking out right now. You have a nice day. Bye.